Hey, it's Kevin Yates from functionaltrainingcoach.com, and today I'm going to show you how you can use shoulder presses to not only prevent shoulder injuries, but to help rehabilitate some shoulder injuries. Now, usually presses, chest presses, bench presses, shoulder presses, those are the first movements that are people are told to avoid at all costs when they have a shoulder injury. Now, obviously, there are some shoulder injuries where presses are not appropriate, but in most cases of overuse type injuries, repetitive stress to the shoulder, the reasons for that aren't necessarily due to pressing movements in particular, but because there's muscular imbalances that exist. Typically, tightness and overuse in the anterior muscles, particularly the anterior deltoid, the upper trap, and levator. Scapula muscles become overactive or tight, dominant. A lot of times there's just immobility. People are tight anteriorly, so they can't open up and perform proper press patterns. So it increases stress to the shoulder. Now, there's a couple things to look for and how you can identify if somebody has one of these dominance in those muscles that will create shoulder stress, and then there's ways to correct it. So the first thing you look for is when someone's doing a press, when they're tight and dominant in those muscles, they'll kind of do a press in more of like an arcing motion, something like this, right? It'll kind of go like that, and they might accompany it with a shrug, like that. Look, if they're really tight or really dominant there. That's one of the biggest reasons why shoulder problems exist with presses. And also it starts to affect the neck, and stress occurs to the neck, so people can get neck problems as well. The other thing is poor mechanics. And a lot of times tightness in the anterior muscles are related to this. So what I mean is when somebody's kind of weak throughout the scapula stabilizers, they'll kind of be a little rounded. Their presses will look a little forward of their head, right? And they'll push up that way. Now the big problem with that is that in order to get that weight in a mechanically more position of advantage for them, they'll push and then they'll lean back, right? So that's a couple problems. Not only are they going to have shoulder problems, but then that leaning back is going to create stress to the lower back. So over time, they get lower back issues as well. So you can start to see how inefficient muscle recruitment patterns, poor mechanics, things like that can lead to shoulder injuries, also start to relate to neck injuries and even low back injuries. So ways to correct it is to make sure that all the presses occur not in an arc but in a straight line. So it should just be straight up and straight down, almost like you're pulling your elbows in your back pockets at the bottom, and you're kind of, I tell my clients to frame their head, really kind of just keep it tight and in a frame. And what you can do from a spotting standpoint is standing behind the person, and you just kind of keep your hands on the outside of their forearms, so when they press and they want to press out into you, you kind of cue them, stay inside my hands, don't touch my hands. And what it does is, you'll be surprised how it forces them to engage their scapula stabilizers and those mid-back muscles, and they'll really start to pull them tight. And that also starts to help open people up. Because again, when the scapular stabilizers are weak, that's where a lot of times forward posture starts to happen. So by pulling back, you can see how that just kind of opens everything up, and it creates a little more room for the shoulder to move. Okay? So those are just some easy ways to help prevent shoulder injuries and also to help rehabilitate. Again, not all presses aren't always appropriate for all shoulder injuries, but in most cases with overuse, presses are very appropriate. And not only that, they are a functional movement pattern that in our everyday life, just doing regular things outside of a gym, around the house, in our everyday life, or even in sports-related activities, overhead movements, our ability to reach and do things overhead, we really need that. So avoiding them doesn't always help things in the long run, but correcting the muscle imbalances that exist always will. All right, so those are your ways that you can use shoulder presses to help prevent and even rehabilitate some shoulder injuries. Let me know your feedback on what you think, and if you have any other ways that you've helped your clients, or even if you've had a shoulder injury, what's worked for you? Post them on the blog. Give me your feedback below. I'd love to hear it. Until next time, this is Kevin Yates from functionaltrainingcoach.com, reminding you to train functional to stay functional.